everybody's biggest problem is just lead quality, people showing up and converting that. And so while the content program and the ad program did a great job of building the authority and getting leads on that level, really over the last 6 months, the quality of leads and the ability to attract that right audience has really dwindled because of the way social campaigns and social platforms have gone. Specifically in July, when every social platform transitioned over to AI advertising, and everybody across the board was like, "What the heck happened?"
Got questions? We bring the facts from proven pros who walk the tracks. Business life, no smoke, just flames. Ask the experts. David Williams brings the game.
All right, welcome back, everybody, for another week's episode of Ask the Experts. I hope everybody had a great holiday, great Christmas, and great New Year. And we're back at it where we bring you real-world experts that can share some of the tips and best practices they found on their road to success. And today we have a very, very special guest. We're thrilled to welcome an exceptional guest, Robert Syslo. He's the founder and CEO of Syslo Ventures, cutting-edge brand, marketing, advertising, production agency based out of Miami, Florida. With nearly 2 decades of experience in branding, production world, Robert has traveled the globe, delivering high-value advertisements, compelling documentary films, cinematic storytelling. He captivates audience. He worked for the Grant Cardone for a number of years, Mr. Uncle G himself. And Robert's had an impressive career of $30 million in advertising sales, earning him the recognition of premier authority in the video production and branding industry. So I would love to give a warm welcome to Mr. Robert Syslo. Welcome to the show today.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Happy to be here.
Yeah, no.
Good to have you. Well, when you hear somebody else read your accolades, you're kind of like, oh, wow. Yeah, I forgot I did that.
Yeah, right.
Grind every day.
Crushing it, man. World shaker. And I think we'll love to dip in. Where did it all start? Because I think when I first, was introduced to you, as I just saw you on a lot of Grant's feeds and his streams, and you're, in my world at least, saw you start out in Grant's world, and then you moved yourself up and took off like a rocket ship, and now you got a incredibly successful advertising agency over there in Miami. But I think the listeners would love to hear, hey, what did that background story look like? What was it look like for working for Grant and now your own agency?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a very easy road right up until Grant. I had experienced being homeless a couple times, stuck in LA, stuck in other countries, unable to get back. But by the grace of God, I found Grant off of Craigslist, and they were just looking for a video editor, which is what I was doing at the time. I was very good at production work, but I wasn't making any money. And so, working for Grant, I didn't really know who he was. I just was like, I could do the job. And if you need the job done, I'll get it done.
Yep.
And they liked that. And I was like, okay, great. And that is really where my trajectory started. I was introduced to entrepreneurship. That was the first time I heard about that term. It was the first time I heard about pitching and closing and objections and recording thousands of hours of content with this guy about sales. And one day it was like, oh, I think I learned this. And I had asked for a raise. I think it was the third time I asked for a raise. And at that point they were like, no, you can go sell something. So I started to sell my production work to his clients. And that's really where my life changed and really probably helped Grant out, the business out tremendously. And so built a marketing agency inside of his company. The last year that I did it, I think we did about 12 million in sales that year, and we had jumped up to like 27 people. But there was a lot of, learnings about, customer interaction and doing business and closing deals. And I just got really addicted to that, and eventually just completely transitioned out of production and was just doing sales all the time, which was great. And then back in like 2018, I started to wrestle with the idea of doing it on my own. And I knew that, in order to run a business, just because you can sell doesn't mean you can just run a business. And I knew that there were other things I'd have to learn along the way. But so I wrestled with that thought for about 6 months and then jumped on my own in 2018 and started my own company. I had a year non-compete and I abided by that. I was a good boy with it, did that. And then started my company really selling in December of 2019. And then 4 months later, COVID hit, and I was like, okay, first challenge, let's do this. Luckily, everybody needed marketing and digital services. So we were like right in the right vein at the time. And, just started myself up till 4 a.m, doing all the work, every single day, and then slowly added people into the team, slowly grew and, expanded to where we are now, so that's like the 10,000 foot high level overview of that journey. But
no, I love that. Well, congrats on all the success there. And, I think, one thing I like to dive into, because there's a lot of our audience here. We got about 8,200 insurance agents. We have other people outside of the insurance industry that'll be listening to this. But, I think a lot of times people get stuck from the start, right? And they don't keep the main thing. They start their business, they get hit with that fire hose. There's so many things to focus on, and they're spreading themselves too thin that they can never really get any traction. If you can attribute the success early on, where you really kept your focus and those 1, 2, maybe 3 things, what would they be that led to the compounded success early on in your business, would you say?
That's a great question. And I actually love that because it's so true, and I think for me, coming from where I came from, I had a lot of people approach me about different ideas. They were like, oh, we could do this. We could do this. If you partner with us, we would do this. And I was pretty selective on that and never did anything other than what I felt comfortable with, what I could do, because I needed to produce income at the time. I had blew through my savings. I had 6 months worth of savings. I blew through it all in 90 days. And I was like, okay. So it was a matter of like, I got to pay the rent now and I got to pay for my other stuff. So I just got really focused in on what I knew I could deliver, which was production work. I taught myself web design. I taught myself CRM. So I added that, and then advertising as well. So I just stuck to that arena. I mean, initially my company was really only focused on social media, advertising, and video work. We didn't do anything with web design. But as we continued, I would listen to what customers were saying. And it wasn't that far of a stretch for us to just add a website, add a CRM, and all the content we produced all filtered into that ecosystem anyway. So I only added things that made sense to help people that I was working with and could increase my value that way. I really steered clear of, oh, I've got this great investment. I've got this great thing. I've got this great product. It'll help grow your business. And I was just like, no, I'm not going to even pay attention to that. So I know you asked me for 3 things, but the first thing was just like head down on what I knew worked. The second was, again, head down on what I knew worked, but only reinforce that. And then the third thing was I really just didn't do anything outside of I didn't try to be anything other than what I knew I could be. I wasn't a coach trying to tell people how to scale their business to 30 million. And I've never done 30 million in sales or anything like that.
We see a lot of that out there.
Yeah. And it still exists. And even in my agency today, like I turn away people like that because I'm like, you've never done it. Like I can't get behind you and help you market that, So that's how I've done it. And I still do it that way today. The only thing that I really became interested in was the AI stuff, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a little bit. But that was I was also kind of like, I need to really look at this and inspect this and not let it take away from my primary source of revenue for my company.
No, it's great. And I guess, today, now that you're, front facing, working with those very businesses, what do you typically find when you sit down with a client? What is their number one problem? And then your number one solution on how to help them solve that problem. Like if you could give your perfect client Cinderella story and maybe share that with the audience, there could be somebody else in the audience that's sitting in that very same place and they're trying to figure out the same thing that one of your clients did. And I guess, what did that look like?
Yeah, I mean, so for about 3 years, we were working on this content program where we would fly out to our customers and produce, 90 days worth of marketing material for them in about 4 hours. It was very successful. It was right at the time when everybody needed it, and we would build them websites. Like we would take care of their whole ecosystem, and we would manage their advertising campaigns. And I'm saying this to set up really the Cinderella story for today of where the problem is. And basically, for the longest period of time, everybody's biggest problem is just leads, lead quality, people showing up and converting that. And so while the content program and the ad program did a great job of building the authority and getting the leads on that level, really over the last 6 months, the quality of leads and the ability to attract that right audience has really dwindled because of the way social campaigns and social platforms have gone. specifically in July when, every social platform transitioned over to AI advertising. And everybody across the board was like, what the heck happened? Like, my leads don't work. This isn't good. Da, da, da. My costs are skyrocketing. And then we found out through a lot of investigation that, a lot of the targeting parameters that we use don't matter anymore. They just don't.
Yep.
It's more suggestive now. And that's really not the way that we like to advertise. So that comes back to the problem of, how do I get the right people? So what I hear every day now is really that. It's just, I've gone through 12 different agencies. They haven't been able to deliver, or they delivered a little bit, or they didn't know, or they asked us to keep spending. And so really my primary focus was this new tech we're using to solve that problem in the marketplace, which addresses that specifically. So that Cinderella story is just us now being able to put in a lot of control and give a lot more predictable outcomes in advertising, which I never used the word predictable and advertising together ever. But I can now, which is cool. So that's really the Cinderella story and where we're at, what we're seeing at the moment.
No, I love that. Love that. Now that, a lot of the listeners, again, in the insurance space, one of the challenges that they're facing out there, I'm sure you're familiar, a lot of the changes in the TCPA world in terms of laws and regulations of outbound dialing, and a lot of agents really getting handcuffed from a standpoint where their main focal point, these agencies, is outbound dialing, buying leads from lead aggregators. But with these new laws, they're looking at it where literally their net cost of acquisition could triple or quadruple, because the number of leads that are going to be available that actually meet the new TCPA guidelines are going to be a much smaller pond to fish in. So that's leaving a lot of agents out there figuring out, hey, what do I do next? How can I go out there at a high volume level and generate some of the same clients? What maybe advice do you have somebody sitting into that seat that's in the midst of that sort of transition of where to kind of move next?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I mean, what you're talking about with the lead aggregators, having done advertising in the insurance space for a number of years with specific clients, like, I was very much aware of that. And the problem with those leads that I found was that they were often sold multiple times.
Yep.
And so they're getting hit from, 6 ways to Sunday from everybody. So there's that viewpoint. And then there's the social media aspect. And this is kind of an interesting moment in social media right now, because you're dealing with a few different things where I think most people are aware of the fact that they should have some sort of social media presence and they should create content. And it's very viable on that level to, even minimally, if you're getting 50 to 60 views, you could get 1 to 2, 3 clients out of that a week if you do it right. Yep. So that would be the first thing that I would look at, is just, okay, how do I invest in some sort of promotional material that I can put out that's outside of the realm of relying on one source of data aggregation for leads. But even more interesting that's happening is, and even in my space, is that it's all really oversaturated at the point, which is kind of a problem. Everybody's doing podcasts. Everybody's trying to do this. And there's nothing wrong with that. I don't think there's anything wrong with doing it. But I think people have to understand the amount of legwork it takes to build something like that, to get it where it's like, I could just rely on this for lead gen. So that introduces, really where I've pivoted my agency model into this kind of deep data model, which in some regards could be relatable to the sense from the lead aggregators that people would buy. But what I wanted to do was find people that are looking right now for any particular product or service, be able to capture that data, and then legally I can market to them. So that's really where I see my entire operation moving. It already shifted there. We're already getting people in the program. But the whole idea is, look, I almost want to make the content creation irrelevant, because what really matters is the conversation, the sales call, and the close.
Yep.
Right. And so you could sit there and spend 6 hours a week making sales calls, making content, or you can make sales calls and quadruple your revenue that way with people that want the product now. So that's really the question. Do you want to do it this way, or do you want to do it this way? And I'm trying to move into this realm where you don't necessarily even have to do content. I want content to be more of a luxury for people. Yeah. I want them to get good qualified leads where they can have communication, they can talk, and they can close, and people are showing up, and they're not, like you said, handcuffed. They have a lot more freedom to build their own method that way.
And I guess, those that are out there, they're trying to build a personal brand. They're trying to build their company brand. And you're seeing, again, more and more out there, hence all the competition of everybody trying to launch a podcast, everybody going out there trying to do it. But what I see typically is they'll give it the old college try for, a couple of months. They don't see the results and things kind of fizzle out. When you look back at somebody that's successfully done it, they've done it right. And, what I see that made up of is consistency, testing, doing all the right things. What did that roadmap look like, taking from somebody that, hey, they just started on that journey of building the brand, and then it actually took them to a place where it took on a life of its own, where it started yielding returns?
Yeah, I think there's an expectation misunderstanding on that.
Yeah.
Where, you see your guys out there that are massive. And I think a lot of people just want to jump to that level, and there's nothing wrong with that. And it's totally achievable. But I think the expectation of the road to get there is something where this becomes another job in a sense, and another aspect of your company that you have to invest money, time, and resources into.
Yep.
If you're really committed to doing that. Like, you've got to have such a deep-rooted purpose and a deep-rooted drive that you can sustain past the first 90 days of like, I only get 10 views. It's like, yeah, everybody did, and you just have to kind of eat that for a little while. Could be 6 months, could be a year, it's unpredictable. Sometimes people can do it and then they just take off like a rocket. And then there's personality viewpoints. Some guys are a lot more open and, could be deemed pretentious in some way, but that works for them and that gets a lot of attention. And there's guys that don't have that and they're a little more conservative, and those guys also do well. So I think the roadmap is just understanding the fact that if you're going to do it, you need to just look at this as, I'm going to just do this as long as the business exists, because that's really the purpose of it. And you've got to be prepared to invest, resources, time, and energy into it over the long term. And that's, that's with anything, it's, you want to scale. I mean, you scale the business to 23 million, what that took and how much energy, time.
No, absolutely.
People have a distorted viewpoint, I think, and not everyone, on that branding side where it should just happen. But when we look at a business, we understand, okay, that's going to take time, but advertising and branding doesn't have the same viewpoint. It's like, needs to be today. It's like, well, it's not exactly how it works. There are things you can do to kind of fire past that and make it go faster, like podcasts, getting in other influencers, which help on that front, but you're going to have to spend money and you're going to have to spend time to build it out. So I think the simple version is, if you just started and it's 90 days in and you're just not killing it yet, like, you're a small child still. You still got to let it grow. You got to go to the gym. You got to put your reps in. You got to work the biceps and the squats. Like, this is not something that you can just deem an immediate satisfactory thing right overnight. And the guys that I've seen really made it, they were doing it for 10 years. They were doing it for 12 years. They were doing it for 15 years. And in the last 3 years of that, it's when they fired off. I mean, I remember, even with Cardone, it was kind of interesting. He had a great presence. He had all this stuff, but I mean, we were there. I was there already with 5 years with him, and it didn't really fire until 6 years in. And it was like, oh, wow, there it is, but he had a lot of other things going on too, to sustain it. So that's how I would view it, is not get discouraged in the fact that, okay, I'm 90 days in, it's not really happening. It's just, look, this is a consistency game and you just got to play it if you want to play it.
Absolutely. And I guess, for those that are out there, doing it and they're trying to make it, have you boiled it down to, let's say you got one of your clients that you're working with, they're trying to, get their personal brand going. They're trying to get their company brand going. If you had to bring it down to a 5-step, 7-step formula of what that looks like, hey, I'm going to post the content. I'm going to review the results, maybe split test different types of content. What would that formula look like if you were to, give it to a client today that was looking to start on that journey?
Perfect. I'll give you 7 steps that you can do with that right now. I'm just writing it down so I can run through it. So the first thing is, I tell people is, number one is just listen to, I use sales calls as the greatest educator for content, because everybody and what they say on those calls is exactly what people are looking for, asking for, struggling with, trying to deal with, trying to overcome. And for every one sales call you have, there's probably 25 people that have the same viewpoint. And if you talk to 60 people a day or 70 people a day, or if you're killing it and you're just doing 100 people a day, that's 100 different ways you can communicate. So people always ask, well, I don't know what to talk about. Well, if you just listen to what people are saying around you, that's a great indicator. And that's your marketing plan. Like, I really don't have anything else to say other than that. People miss that. They're like, I've got to be funny and I've got to come up with this crazy narrative. And I'm like, no, you just listen to what people are talking about as a problem. The second thing is then you just create your material on that. You do your photography, you do your videos, and you just elaborate. You dive in you make it personal from your viewpoint, your experience. That's really the factor. People just tend to talk heads and educate, which is good, but you got to relate that back to, personal experience on some level. And then the third thing you're going to do is, go ahead.
Quick question on that one.
Yeah.
Would you focus that content that's sort of wrapping around the problem more on the outcome of here's the ultimate problem we're going to solve for you? Or do you focus it on here's how we're going to help solve the problem for you? Like, that's something I always struggle with. Do you try to sell to the solution, or do you try to sell to the method that'll lead to the solution?
Well, I think those could be the same in some situations where the method is the solution, right? But for me, I need to enlighten you that there's a way out. That's all. I need to enlighten you that there's an option there. So if that answers your question, that's how I would approach it, right? So, the big thing we're having now is like lead quality is low, cost per acquisition is high, and competition is high in advertising. Great. So my material is going to be all about that. My offers are going to be about that, especially with what we're selling now. So, and then my content really dissects that and shows why that's happening, So there's an enlightened piece and there's an option to solve that problem piece. And that's where the content comes from on that front. Then the third is, posting about that. So again, the posts, I wouldn't use ChatGPT for this stuff. I would just write your own personal stuff on that. If you want to use ChatGPT for it, great. Get a little bit of a baseline, but always make it personal. The fourth is then sit back, watch, and see who engages in what. It's really funny when I post myself and I talk about myself and my stuff, it does okay. I bring my wife into the mix, it explodes. I'm like, great, my wife's a valuable asset. I need to use her more. Yep. Or anything like that. It just looks, or I talk about if I get a little aggressive and antagonistic on a post and I get a lot more engagement, I'm like, okay, do I want to play that way all the time? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't, because that brings its own type of audience that I just don't really love to engage with. But you just observe what your content's doing, you observe what your ad's doing, and then you pivot based on that. The fifth is you just reinforce what you saw and you go back to scale one, recreate, post, observe. The sixth is advertise. So I would give it like 2 weeks, and I would just 2.5 weeks, see what's performing the best and say, all right, we're going to boost this post. We're going to make offers based on this. We're going to put our ad budget behind that. And that's going to give me the trajectory of what I need to do going forward. And then this cycle never ends, right? So this goes back to your first question, David, where you're like, well, what's that? What's the roadmap? That's the roadmap. You do that, you do it again, then you do that, then you do it again. And then you just keep recycling that same system as you narrow down and hammer home the solutions that you've got. No, and I think a lot of people they want that one offer, that one thing that's just going to fire.
Yeah, they're looking for the magic bullet that really doesn't exist. But everything I heard there is you're finding out, really relate to that person's problem, find their pain, and maybe, it's kind of like a dentist. You go to the dentist sometimes and they got a cavity forming, but they can't, unless the dentist taps on the tooth, you don't feel the pain. But when he taps on the tooth, it gets you to reminder that you might not be feeling the pain at this moment, but that could come up at every moment, and it gets you to take action. And I think it's almost the same thing there. It's like, hey, what is their problem? What is their pain? Can you make them feel it a little bit deeper and then give them the solution to that pain, that discomfort that they've been looking for, that they didn't know existed, that was out there. And then you're going to, gain more and more trust with that audience, providing them that value.
True. And the other thing I'll add to that is when you find the one message that really penetrates, don't change it. Just repeat that as often as you can in an advertising perspective. Once you find it, don't change it. You can redress it up a little bit if you want. But we did a case and scenario, multiple clients, including myself. We finally found this one ad, this one set of message, this how it was created, and it just became the ad. We had 15 other variations that we were running, and we ran them all. But every time we didn't run this one, we never got results. And so we just ran the same ad for like 2 years straight practically because it worked. right? So when you find it, the thing is if it drops a little bit, the tendency is I got to change it. I wouldn't say rush to change it so fast. I would just really look at, is there anything else that we could do with this? Do we need more money? What's going on with the messaging and the targeting of that? When you find the message, don't deviate too far from it, because it works. And then you can sell your other products. They may not need that one product, but they came in the door with that one. And then you can take them up the road where they need to go.
No, I love that. And I guess, what's your thought on not reinventing the wheel? Because I think somebody can go out there in an industry, personal brand, whatever it might be, and it's rare that they're the first ones that are out there pioneering, growing that brand. There's usually a multitude of other people that have done it. They've done it successfully. And what's your thought about, taking, the fact that success leaves clues? You find somebody that's already doing some of the things that you've done, dissect it from an analytics standpoint. Hey, what is the genetic makeup of what they're doing, the type of content that they're creating, the type of ads they're creating, breaking that down, reverse engineering it and making it your own to try to accelerate that curve a little bit in terms of getting to the right audience faster?
Yeah, that's a great question. I really don't think you need to reinvent anything. I think new technology comes out, but even with the new tech that comes out, it's in some ways relatable to what's already been created and improved on. So when I approach that kind of question, I really just ask people to look for the areas that are missing, and that's your opportunity, right? So if someone, just like with the content creation game, our agency had a unique position where we can do not just content, but we can do the sites and we can do the CRMs and we can do the ads, as opposed to some that only do pieces of that. Now, in the insurance space, you got to find what that is for you, right? So what are the things that are missing that maybe other competitors are doing that are in the same field, but you can do that they can't? And that gives you the leverage to have a cool offer that you can hammer in the marketplace, and a unique selling proposition for the ICP you're trying to sell to, who might need a more holistic solution than just one thing. And I think that's where these guys kind of get tripped up, where they come out like, this is the greatest thing, this is the newest thing. And it's like, well, it's not really new. It's just in the sense it either makes it better, improves upon what already exists in a way that maybe you didn't think about before. And that's where you have to differentiate yourself. So, I mean, the only time you're ever going to reinvent the wheel is something where you've got Tesla, who's like, I can catch rockets, like that's a pretty new thing like that. I don't think you can really compete with that. Amazon as well has its own thing, but there's not, like, it's got to be so dramatically new that no one's ever seen it before that you can legitimately say that from that perspective.
No, absolutely. And it certainly sounds like your approach when you're working with a client is it's done in a unique enough way that, I mean, would you agree, eliminates a lot of your competition out there? And that's what I like to tell a lot of clients out there is like, how do you go out there? For example, we started a recruiting company and we noticed, what is the big problem with recruiting? It's expensive. It's boring. Nobody wants to do it. And you don't think of anybody from a customer service perspective, like a Mercedes-Benz, an American Express style company in recruiting. There's nobody that really focuses on it. So we decided to come out, hey, you know what? We're going to get it done a third of the cost, third of the price. Before we really push it to market, I'm a big fan of taking a product or service and making it a 9 out of 10. What's a 9 out of 10? That you get the solution so sound that when you pitch it to somebody, at least 9 out of 10 people are highly intrigued, highly interested because of the makeup of the offer. And then when you get it there, I like that kind of product because it's not like you're pushing a force uphill. You can start to push it downhill and it can kind of take on its own momentum if it's a good enough solution to people. And because we made that the focal point and customer service, obsessing over the customer experience, that resulted in turning our customers into brand evangelists that go out and scream from the rooftop about us. And we ended up with over 4,000 online reviews. So now when Andy has to go sell our product, well, why should I do business with you? Well, they might exist out there, but I haven't found them yet. I'd be willing to bet you a steak dinner that you can't find another recruiting company that's got 4,000 online positive reviews. And what we found is it created this differentiator that now, what competition? Because we're operating at such a unique level up here that as long as we can articulate the value proposition good enough, it really separates us from the rest of the competition. And that kind of sounds like what you've done on the digital marketing space and branding space.
It's the same. Yeah, absolutely the same thing. It's that you found that positioning that you can go to the marketplace with. Because I'm also thinking about the sales guys, right? Having done that, but also doing the digital space, you look at both angles of it, and the offer has to be in a way where it's like, okay, we're getting on this call, but from a prospect sales guy perspective, that salesperson's super empowered because that offer is just so good, and there should be, as you start to pitch it, moments in that call where there's that switch, where there's like that, I don't really know if this is real. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh my God. And then they get it.
Yeah.
And that's that position that you're talking about. And if you could do that on advertising in the front and take that switch moment and use that in your advertising, that's where the sales calls become a lot more fun. I'd rather talk to 10 people a day that are interested, that saw it and really understand it, versus, getting 100 leads a day, nobody answers the phone, or they're just like, I don't know what this is, right?
Yep.
I'd rather do that all day. It may cost more, but the revenue potential for a company on that, whatever the industry is in, is way more maximized because it's a much more educated but also interested audience. So what I try to do is cut through all of those objections and educate before anybody gets on a call. Like, I want that person super enlightened before we have a conversation, so that they feel like they're not, oh, I got to sit and I have to really understand this. I want them to feel engaged when I call them or a team member calls them and they understand what we're about to talk about.
Yeah. And then, as I'm hearing you speak more and more and kind of dissecting the journey, like I'm always a big believer in, when you're starting a company, even when I started, again, a recruiting company, I lived in each one of those positions to really understand the depth of the position to be an effective leader. How high is high? How low is low? What are the objections they're going to face? And when I look at your success, I almost see a similar thing, because you not only lived in the world of content creation, but you crossed over to the sales side of it and understood what the sales cycle looked like, understood those conversations and nuances, the objections. How important did you personally find that to be, to have that experience to play into your success? One, and I guess the second follow-up question is, there's a lot of business owners out there that are maybe listening. They started an insurance business, but they never really dove into sales, and this is their first time getting into sales, or the first time getting into leading a business. And as you know, when you first open up your doors, you're getting hit with a fire hose 100 miles an hour, and it's tough to be in a state of learning when that fire hose is hitting you, but you still have to have, I think, those layers of experience to be able to be an effective leader. What would you have to say about that?
I don't think it's possible to really scale something without any kind of sales experience. I think you need to do it because that is the most informative position you could ever have for a company. And I think for me, being good at a skill, which was production work, I missed, I did that for like 10, 15 years before I actually understood business and sales. And I knew right before I worked with Grant, was like, I have no education in business. I know that what I can do is good, but I have no idea even how to get money for this.
Yep.
Right. So the sales cycles and the sales calls does a few things. It builds this muscle that you can't really get anywhere else. It builds this insight that you can't, like, no real report is going to replace that experience of talking to a consumer, really listening to their pain, or listening to a tough consumer, or handling someone that can be tough to talk to. And then you handle that guy, and then you get someone that's so easy to talk to, and you're like, wow, that was a gift, you know, and you're like, oh my God, this day is great. And from a business perspective, it allowed me to understand the mechanics and quality of deliverables that my business or any business should deliver, because you're selling a main final product, but that final product probably has 10 to 15 sub products. And if one of those sub products fails, the whole final product can fail, right? So you as the business owner have to understand each section of that. So me knowing, like, I can do everything in my business better than anybody that's in my business, but I can't do all of it, right?
Yep.
So I have to have people that I can go in and I can observe and say, okay, we just need to tweak that. Good, you got it, and train people through. So as a business owner, that sales skill is something that you're just never going to lose, and it's something you're going to need to move forward. But also understanding every position allows you to maintain control over quality. each department in my company. I mean, we have a production department, a web design department, a CRM department, an ad department, social media management department, sales department. And you have to be able to move through each of those and be able to see immediately where something's broken and be like, oh, right there needs to be fixed. And if you're not able to do that and handle people well, which sales gives you the skill to do, you're going to be, like you said, you're going to be rolling a really big, rock up a very steep hill, if you'll even be able to roll it up the hill, So, and I think training, finding the time to train, even if you don't have the time, I still have to find time to do it because, there's like little basic things that slip out. Oh, I forgot to say the price up front. Oh, okay, let me go back and correct that. Oh, I forgot to ask them to buy today. Oh, it's so simple. How did I forget that? Oh, I didn't write them up, or, whatever. So you just have to, my whole approach is marketing and sales, but I do both because I like the experience of being able to handle both sides of that equation. And a business owner should know that. I don't think you can live, I think at some point you could kind of have that ivory tower mentality, but you got to have a really good team, and you still should never forsake being able to just I'm coming out, I'm going down to talk to the production guys today. That's what I'm going to do.
No, absolutely. And I think a lot of times what I see out there, it really comes down to a sense of, comfort. Somebody starts that business, they maybe didn't have the sales experience, so they're leaning in like a customer service role or a role in their business where they feel comfortable. It's not necessarily the right role that they need to be in, but then, they stick into this lane that kind of stunts the growth of their business. But it's when they truly get out there, get uncomfortable, they start to learn a thing or two about a thing or two when it comes to sales. Well, now they get the clarity that they need to lead in a different way, and then hold their team members accountable in a different light because they understand all the nuances of it.
Right. Exactly. They have that control point. And I think if you don't experience that, you can't run control and make corrections as you need to.
No, I love it. And, one thing I want to get into too is, with the evolution of technology in AI, I know that's something near and dear to your heart, something near and dear to our heart. We've been building it into our companies. For example, we have a CRM company too. We have one of the biggest CRMs that insurance agents use, Ricochet 360. And we're starting to build AI into that, as well as build our own AI automation software that automates the hiring process and even the training process. So on our CRM, for example, what we're finding is there's a lot of, there might be 10 different things we're looking for in a sales call. And it's tough to get perfection every single time. And you always have a rep that's missing something. So we're actually building an AI scorecard in real time that transcribes the call and gives them a real-time score while they're on the call to make sure they're hitting every single step of the sales process. And then from there, it sends an API hook over to our platform, Jarvie, that assigns a training course for the week based off their training deficiencies. So let's say, hey, they're having problems overcoming objections. It'll assign that video module that has interactive live role play, where now they can live role play it back into the platform and then hopefully increase their competency and their skill set on that topic. So next week we can focus on a different piece. So that was something we never would have thought we would be able to bring our companies and that sort of process to life until AI hit the market. How are you seeing AI play a role in your company and just out there in the marketplace in general that you're most excited about?
Yeah, I may have to talk to you offline about that particular product because that's cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's perfect. I mean, and I think AI. So I was 50-50 on AI for a long time. I was like, no, this is not relevant. That was about a year ago. And then AI started coming on the scene with, you could take videos and chop them up super fast. So like some of the stuff that we were doing started to become a little irrelevant because the technology was moving so fast, and having a physical person film with you can be easily replaced, unfortunately, today. And so we had to do a little bit of a pivot with that. And we really just started to hone in on that. So there's cool things that I think, like what you were talking about, analyzing things in real time and, give feedback on that, is something that I believe AI is incredible at doing. And something that I love. I mean, for us, very recently we brought on tech partners with us, and our sole purpose was to solve this quote unquote abusive relationship that most businesses have with advertising. And that relationship is spend more tests, low quality tests. And you have to kind of just suffer through that. And even agencies, I don't knock other agencies because advertising's tough. And it's I think agencies are one of the most abused businesses out there.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of particles that go into that, but require a lot of training and demands for results, right? And I understand, like it's an investment. Unfortunately, there's just been so many changes with AI on every social platform that it's hard for an agency to keep up with it. So one of the things that we did was we wanted to find, okay, what is the missing piece here for advertising that's causing all the problems? And there's a few of them. There's really no, like, you have a step 1, step 2, like we kind of went through those 7 steps, like for content creation, but there was no like overarching step 0 for advertising. It was, let's create an offer, let's write the copy based on what we see, and let's promote that, let's advertise and test it. And 10, 20, 30, 100, $200,000 later, it's like, well, okay, that maybe didn't work. All right, we're struggling and going from there. So what we did was we said, let's take a real holistic approach, kind of like to what you're doing with your sales guys, to the whole entire advertising process. And so the first thing that we do is, we call it deep data. So we've built a system where we can put any type of search term, business, viewpoint, anything that will then actively scan across every Google search, Yahoo search, Bing search, social platform, Reddit chat room for people that are looking for a product and service in real time. And we're able to look back over the last 7 days in any industry, and I can see and capture their data. So I can get their names, I get their phone numbers, I understand where they are, I get their mobile ID tags, and we get what we call buyer ambition. So these are people that we're looking for, auto insurance or advertising problems. So I know right now, first, the people that I need to go talk to, because these are the guys that are looking for it. This is totally compliant. I didn't bring it on because if I thought it wasn't compliant, but I was like, can we do this? They're like, yeah, we totally can. I was like, great. So we take that and then we can use that as audiences for advertising. So before we'd have to go find these people and wait and rely on Facebook to do this. Now we know who we're talking to. The second thing we do is we installed AI onto consumer websites of our clients. And this AI does the same thing that does, except it captures the data that are actually of people that are actively on your site. You can see their net worth. We can see what pages they looked at, when they visited, what their names are, all of the above. And we also set up an auto email system that recaptures 70% of the traffic back to a site to take action. And that AI is in like your voice. So that's the data piece. But we took it even further because the other part of it was, okay, well, what's the copy? What do we say? What do we create? What's the brand look like? So our AI analyzes that big list of people that are searching and then gives us about a 60-page report on their buying patterns, their religious views, their conservative views, their credit lines, how they invest, why they invest, where they're located, are they married, do they have dogs, do they like kids, like all of this stuff, 700 different points on each individual person we see. And that AI will then come back and tell us exactly the copy, the headlines, the landing page copy, the fonts, the color schemes, the video ads, everything that it should say as directed to that specific audience. So now I can drop my cost per acquisition down by at least 40% in 7 days by using this list. Then I can actually know who these people are and how to talk to them. And then I can go to market with full certainty that I'm speaking to them the right way. Not, okay, let's list, like that's why I said we're kind of bypassing that initial thing you asked me before. What's the 7-step process? Now, what's really cool is you can use this AI information to inform your content creation. So you can do that. And we're doing that as well, but we're really focusing on driving better leads, better sales, works for e-commerce, better conversions, quality people, the right influencers, the right decision makers to talk to. And it's just been a blast to see what AI is doing. And this is awesome. And this is proprietary. Like, this is not, we can't put this in ChatGPT. Like, you guys built your own thing. We built our own thing for this. It doesn't exist anywhere. But I was just blown away by how cool it is to be able to do something like that for a business. And it was a big relief for me because it was like, wow, we can actually have more predictable outcomes, which I think AI is going to give a lot of people.
Oh,
The ability
absolutely.
to
I
make
mean,
it
that sounds amazing. And it sounds like that's, really a good counter step to what they did changing the algorithms on all these social platforms. Because now what I'm hearing there is really on your website, you can have a super pixel, and the people that you wouldn't normally capture their data just off their Mac ID, their device ID, their IP address, whatever it might be, pinging it across a database. And then you're extracting all of that client data that they're an interested party, build your targeted audience off of that, and then get your targeted audience so narrow, thin, almost down to, instead of taking that shotgun approach, you're taking that sniper approach.
You call it sniper advertising. Is exactly.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's exactly what it is. And when you see it and you start having conversations that match your demographic and the types of people you already know you like to close, that's a game changer. And the game just becomes more exciting, and it removes a lot of that emotional distress from a business owner perspective.
Yep.
From advertising, because it can be it is emotionally distressful. It's like, oh, we spent that, we got to do that again. But yeah, I mean, we are capturing that information, and you own this data. This is the other side of it. Like, it's yours. Like, it's not owned by Facebook. It's not owned by Google. It's your data. And we take the necessary security precautions with that. We have to do that. We have all of our things in place for that viewpoint. But the sniper aspect of what AI can do is just making business more efficient. And I think that's what AI is. If we do it right, that's where I see the benefit of AI. It just makes things way more efficient for people, gives them more control, and they don't have to worry so much.
And what's maybe a client example of somebody that, hey, they're just doing it the old fashioned way, going to market, not getting the results they wanted out on social media with their advertising efforts. But then once you layered in this kind of, sniper targeting approach, leveraging the AI, do you have a particular client you can think of that went from A to Z, and what that difference in result look like?
Yeah, I mean, as an example, we had a construction firm. I know it's not exactly insurance, but as far as construction is concerned, I mean, their cost per lead was around $225. I mean, they were selling like $300,000, $500,000, $50,000 deals.
Yep.
And he has a very hefty ad budget, spending about $20K a month, which is pretty hefty. We were able to knock that cost down just by collecting the data in real time. We dropped it down to about 85 per lead for him.
Oh, it's incredible.
And it was like, and that happened within 7 days. It was like, what? And then we followed up and, made the necessary changes on his website, did everything from the viewpoint of what the ads need to say and so on and so forth. And that became, for him, he's like, the people that are meeting us now are ready to buy. They already are. They had like a 700% return on ad spend within 12 days just by using it. Even for myself, like as a case study, I'm doing it for myself too. I mean, my lead costs for about 120. I'm down to $23. And, our average ticket price ranges anywhere from, on the low side, 12K, on the high side could be 50K. So it's just been incredible to see that control and that certainty come in. And it works in any space, because now we're not paying. That's why your costs are so high, because what other ad agencies do is they go to the social platform and they build their lookalike audiences and they build their ads, but they're all using the same people. This is real-time looking. We can do this for you, specifically for you, for your product and how you want to do it. And that's the goal of what really we wanted to create was, okay, you don't have to compete in an oversaturated ad space. You've created your own ad space.
No, I absolutely love that. Love that. And I guess, when you get at that point, in that case in point example, you got it from average cost per sale, 240 down to 85. What does ongoing maintenance, because obviously what works today might not work tomorrow, ongoing maintenance and then scalability, once you find that sweet spot, typically look like for your client?
Well, the cool thing is that we're constantly getting new data captures every week. So you're always getting new people. That's number one. Number two, those reports are constantly being updated from the new data that we're pulling. Yep. And then the creatives are constantly being upgraded to match that. And you don't have to go create 100 videos to do it. Like, you only really need 3 or 4 good ads that make sense. So your production time gets cut in half. And then maintenance is just, once you start to see the scalability, that just becomes the engine. Now we have prediction and we have measurable KPIs. We know the ICP we're trying to advertise to. And now it's just, we reinforce this. So going back to that first thing, we're doing what we already were doing, not really reinventing the wheel. We're just making it more efficient for the business owner to advertise. And they know, they're like, wow, I see that. Oh my gosh. Okay. You know, click-through rates dropping by like 60%, 70%, because we're just like, we know who we're going to, and we know how to talk to them. You know, we know who the audience is. So instead of spending, like, I think the stat is like 87% of ads that get served are served to people that would never buy your product. I think that was the stat I saw. And it's like, well, if I'm spending $100,000 a month in ad spend, 87% of that's going to people that would never buy. What if I can make that 100% of the people I'm serving to would buy my product? That's a nice inversion and a nice power position for a company to go into with their advertising. Then for us, I mean, it's just become something where they don't cut it. You know, advertising is usually the first thing cut, which is the wrong thing to do that I've seen. But now it's like, you need it. You know, it's a data-driven program as opposed to more of a guesswork, let's test this program.
No, I love that. Love that. And now many of the insurance agents that are listening, and I'm sure, you know, I know you're pretty familiar with the insurance industry, but they're facing a lot of pressure. Like, insurance carriers are, you know, changing their guidelines of who's eligible and what sort of business that they can write, which is a lot less business than usual in a lot of different states that are out there. They're cutting back-end commissions. So it's really creating this pressure chamber that's squeezing the business model of insurance agents, where unless you're a big agency, you're kind of bootstrapping. You're having to be scrappy. You're bootstrapping, and there's not a tremendous amount of additional capital for marketing spend. If you were one of those agencies that are out there, and maybe you reach that $3 million level and just overall revenue, and you're kind of stuck at that place, and you don't have a enormous marketing budget to go out there and scale, what would you do as that insurance agent, and what sort of advice would you have for those folks out there?
Well, you don't need an enormous amount of budget to really get really qualified leads that could change your day today. I would definitely look at that. You know, I've made this program accessible for people, and I'm not trying to pitch my product, but I would do something that's a little more data driven if I could. That's going to give me a little more prediction. I'd rather invest whatever budget I had into something like that than say, go create content on social media.
Yep.
Truthfully, today, because you've got so much competition out there. If you couldn't do it that way, then option B would be, I would get really focused in on those sales calls and listen to what people are talking to me about. Even if you're only talking to 5 people a day, that's more than enough for you to pull a survey from and build material around. And if you can't spend, you know, $3,000 a month in ads, now you could start to look at, well, maybe I just take this and I boost this and I just focus on this one message and just the goal for you should be to just open up conversations. That's it. However you do that is really, you know, up to you, whether that's cold calling. I have a campaign right now that I'm running. It's not very expensive, and I probably get around 10 to 12 just direct messages a day that we just talk to people and find a solution for. And I think it costs me, out of my entire budget, which is pretty good, I would say about $500 a month, and I'm getting 20, 30 opportunities just from that. So, I mean, there's little tricks you could do that don't really require a huge chunk of spend for you to make that happen. Obviously, data is going to make it faster, but if you don't have the cash flow, then strategic content creation becomes a little more effective for you, where it's not so much about, let me go batch create 100 videos. Let me create videos that actually are going to answer questions for people. And I would put my attention into that, and then use that with your CRM, if you've got one, to reactivate your list, to stay in communication with your list, to enlighten the list, and then use that with your sales team to be able to follow up from, just giving them weaponry that they can use in the marketplace today.
No, I love that. Love that. And I guess, you know, going into, 2025, here we are. I think we're going into a different area. I think AI is going to take over more and more. What are you most excited about and trying to really stay ahead of in 2025 to, I guess, seize as much opportunity as possible?
I think what I'm working on right now, I mean, for the last few months, I was really looking for an offer that I could kind of bust into the marketplace with, that just kind of quiets everybody down and be like, we've got this and that's that. We did it a few years ago with our accelerator program. I had never been first to market in anything in my entire life, but this one worked and people started to copy it. I had people literally copy my exact copy, which I was like,
Yeah.
wow, okay. So it worked really well and we did a great job with it. And I think what I'm most excited about is just the implementation of this for companies. And giving them a lot more control and certainty and predictability in ads. Like that's a great conversation to have.
Yep.
For me to transform someone's negative attitude about advertising and their PTSD from their bad experiences, of which most business owners have,
Yep.
and say, we don't have to do that anymore. You don't have to be in that relationship anymore. This is what a good, healthy relationship looks like. That's really exciting. And then the second piece is we're actually creating this from a website perspective, where we're able to analyze in real time what messaging, why people drop off. Are they stopping at that picture? Does that picture ruin what you're trying to accomplish? So we really, truly have that whole control point for the whole ad ecosystem. And then that moves into us we're looking at doing like, I would say something along the lines of company consultation into acquisition with this, because now we can dissect an entire company's sales process and advertising process where we'll say, hey, we'll come in for a piece of equity and we're going to do this and we're going to scale your company. And then you either sell that company and we get a piece of that, or we just get revenue in perpetuity. So those are the three things for me right now that I'm very excited about. And it's cool to have a program that's scalable to do that with. I think before I didn't quite have it. I had a great program, but I missed on a couple of points of scalability, which I'm excited about now because we've got it.
No, I love that. Love that. And as we're nearing the end of the show here, I want to first and foremost, thank you so much for your time today. You've given so much incredible knowledge and wisdom to everybody here in the group. And again, those of you that are listening, whether it's live or you're watching the rerun of this, make sure to show Robert some love down in the chat. Because I want to have an opportunity to allow yourself, talk about how people can work with you and what that looks like. So, you're obviously doing a great job, and we only bring on people that do an incredible job for their clients. And, that's clear and apparent what you're doing. But if you had one final piece of wisdom for everybody on the call to take away going into 2025, that I guess could leave the biggest impact into their businesses and impact their lives in a profound way, what would that one thing be?
Yeah, I think the first thing would be, not get discouraged by what's going on economically out there in the marketplace. I think a lot of people had that in the last quarter. At least a lot of the clients we were working with experienced some weirdness. Yep. And I think understanding that the way to combat that is just an activity handling. Like it's just, you have to increase the activity level of what you were doing. So if you're looking at starting a brand, start the brand. Like don't not do it. I would do everything I can to find unique AI systems that could incorporate to make your life easier, especially if you're a little bit of a smaller company.
Yep.
Because it can be quite challenging. There's a lot of things you have to watch, a lot of things you have to monitor and handle. And I think if you can just set up some systems to help you with that would be the correct thing to do, and if it's slow, do that, like reinforce the business in every way possible. And then just do everything you can to find your unique value proposition in the marketplace and make sure you're talking to the right people.
Yep.
A lot of people say that. I think really that's going to be a lot more data informed. So do everything you can to just get as informed as possible with your ad efforts, with your sales calls, and you're going to be fine.
No, I love it. Love it. And I guess last but not least, how do people follow you, and what does working with Robert Syslo look like?
That's awesome. Yeah. So, you can follow me on all the social platforms at Robert Syslo Jr. My website is sysloventures.com. I tend to respond to everybody that reaches out to me. I do have that personal touch kind of nailed down, which a lot of people find unique. So we will definitely have a conversation. If you want to book a call with me, you can do it on my website, reach out to me on social media. My phone number's on the website, whatever you guys would like to do as far as just communication. And, I think the simple version is let's just have a conversation, see where your problem points are, and let's look at some solutions for you that won't break the bank, but give you a good, return on your money so that we can scale you in 2025.
No, I love that. Love that. So you heard it here. Those of you that are out there, your marketing efforts are shifting. They're changing a lot of the rules and TCPA laws, you name it. Robert's a great resource to go to open up, add some additional arrows in your quiver to grow your business this year. And Robert, just thank you so much for being on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure. You've just been a wealth of knowledge here today. And again, everybody, let's make sure to give him a lot of love and share the content out there. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in to another week of Ask the Experts here live in the Insurance Syndicate Group. And until next week, we'll bring in another expert and dive into some more knowledge bombs for you all.